The curse of the Black Pyramid. The map in the dust. The sun burned high above the endless dunes, each wave of golden sand shimmering like molten fire beneath the desert sky. To the north lay Cairo, with its bustling streets and well-trodden tourist pyramids of Giza. But far to the south, beyond maps and memory, there was a place whispered only in rumors among desert tribes, a place so cursed, even the Bedouin refused to ride near it after nightfall. Few believed the legends, of course. In Cairo's university halls, professors dismissed them as tribal superstition, fables born to scare children into obedience. But for Professor Jonathan Hale, a weathered British Egyptologist with streaks of gray in his beard and eyes sharpened by decades of searching, the stories were more than idle campfire tales. He had spent years tracing them, piecing together fragmented inscriptions that hinted at a pyramid unlike any other, a black pyramid, invisible on maps, shunned by history, and older than the very pharaohs. Hale's obsession had earned him ridicule. Colleagues called him delusional, a treasure hunter chasing phantoms. But Hale knew better. He had found scraps, half-destroyed papyri tucked away in forgotten corners of archives, that spoke of a house of shadows, built not of limestone, but of basalt as dark as midnight. A tomb, a prison, and a temple, all in one. It was on a scorching afternoon in July when Hale's fortune shifted. He had been scouring a dusty antique shop on the edge of Cairo's Khan el-Khalili Bazaar when he came across a peculiar chest, cracked, locked with rust, and forgotten beneath piles of brass trinkets. The shopkeeper swore it was worthless, yet Hale felt his pulse quicken the moment he laid eyes on it. After bargaining, he carried it back to his small study and pried it open with trembling hands. Inside was a bundle of withered parchment, wrapped in silk that had long turned to threads. The ink was faded but legible, a map, drawn in strokes of black and crimson. Not a map of Egypt as tourists knew it, no Nile clearly marked, no Giza, no Luxor, but a stretch of desert dotted with unfamiliar glyphs. At the center stood a pyramid icon inked in jet black, surrounded by a ring of red symbols that glowed faintly as if alive. His heart thundered. It exists. The very next day, Hale assembled a small team for an expedition. There was Amira Nasser, a sharp-witted Egyptian historian in her late 20s who had grown tired of dusty lectures and yearned for discovery in the field. She knew the desert, the language of the ancients, and had inherited her grandfather's stubborn streak. Then came Daniel Cross, an American photographer barely out of university, hired to document the journey. He was eager, naive, but possessed an eye for detail that often revealed what others missed. Lastly, there was Yusuf al-Masri, a Bedouin guide from a desert tribe known for their unmatched knowledge of the sands. He was older, wiry, his skin weathered like cured leather. Yusuf spoke little, but when Hale mentioned their destination, his face grew dark. That place, Yusuf warned in a low voice, is not for men to enter. It was sealed before Egypt was Egypt. Even the desert itself buries it in anger. But Hale, driven by obsession, refused to turn away. He promised Yusuf a fortune and, reluctantly, the guide agreed. The journey began with Cairo's chaos fading into silence as their caravan pressed southward. For days they rode camels across the blistering desert, stopping only at night to rest. Sandstorms lashed them, and water became scarcer with each step. The desert was a cruel mistress, stripping them of strength, but Hale pressed on with unwavering conviction. On the seventh night, under a moonless sky, Yusuf stopped suddenly. He crouched low, scooping a handful of sand and letting it slip through his fingers as if reading omens. His voice trembled. "We are near, too near." The team looked ahead. Rising on the horizon was a silhouette, impossibly sharp against the stars. Not golden like Giza's pyramids, not weathered sandstone, but a black structure, its surface absorbing even the faint light of the stars. The Black Pyramid. It towered higher than any Hale had seen, its sides unnaturally smooth, as though carved by hands not human. No hieroglyphs adorned its exterior, only vast emptiness. Around it lay shattered obelisks and broken statues, their features erased as if deliberately defaced. As they approached, the air grew heavier, thicker. Daniel swore his camera began to malfunction, its film fogging with each click. Amira whispered verses under her breath, clutching an amulet her grandmother had given her. Even Hale, though thrilled beyond measure, felt a weight pressing on his chest. At the pyramid's base, they found a grand entrance blocked by a slab of black stone. But across its surface were carvings, strange glyphs that seemed to writhe in torchlight. Amira knelt, tracing her fingers over the symbols. "This isn't hieroglyphic," she murmured, brow furrowed. "It's older. Much older. A language before Egypt, before writing as we know it." Yusuf stepped back, shaking his head violently. "It is cursed. The seal of silence. Once broken, no man can escape what sleeps inside." But Hale, trembling with excitement, pressed his hand against the stone. To his astonishment, the slab shifted with a groan that echoed like thunder. Slowly, it slid aside, revealing a yawning darkness within. A blast of cold air rushed out, carrying with it the stench of earth long sealed away. The torches flickered. Somewhere deep inside, a sound stirred, like a sigh escaping from the lungs of the earth. Daniel lifted his camera, snapping a picture. The flash illuminated a vast corridor lined with basalt walls so polished they reflected their faces back like mirrors. Hale's voice cracked with awe. "We are standing where no man has stood for 5,000 years, maybe 10. The Black Pyramid welcomes us." And so they stepped inside, unaware that with each footfall, the pyramid was waking. The labyrinth of shadows. The torch flames danced nervously as the group entered the yawning corridor. The basalt walls seemed alive, their surfaces so polished they reflected the explorers' movements like restless shadows. With each step, the air grew colder, heavier, as if the pyramid itself was watching. Professor Hale led the way, his weathered hands trembling slightly as they gripped his torch. His eyes glowed with obsession, the fire of discovery drowning out fear. Behind him walked Amira, her sharp gaze scanning every surface, every glyph, her historian's instincts both terrified and enthralled. Daniel followed close, camera clutched to his chest, snapping cautious photos that never seemed to develop right. Yusuf lingered last, his face carved in dread. The silence was suffocating. Their footsteps echoed too loudly, bouncing back unnaturally, as if the walls were not stone but hollow. At the first junction, they found two passageways. One sloped downward steeply, its walls marked with faint carvings, the other leveled off into blackness. Amira crouched, brushing sand off the etched symbols. Her brow furrowed. "These aren't Egyptian gods," she whispered. "Not Ra, not Osiris, not even the oldest deities of the Nile. These figures are wrong." Daniel peered over her shoulder. The carvings were humanoid but distorted, elongated skulls, eyes like voids, arms stretching unnaturally. Some seemed to kneel around a central throne, their faces lifted in worship, their mouths wide in silent screams. Hale leaned close, his voice hushed with awe. They were older than gods, the Egyptians must have inherited their stories. A race erased from memory. Yusuf spat on the ground, muttering a prayer. "They are not gods. They are jailers, and what they jailed sleeps here still." Hale ignored him and chose the downward passage. For hours, they descended into the labyrinth. The torchlight revealed chambers lined with strange murals, battles between men and monstrous beings, offerings of blood poured into bowls, cities swallowed by fire. The deeper they went, the stronger the air pulsed with something ancient, something alive. Finally, they reached a vast hall, its ceiling lost in darkness. At its center stood a colossal stone table, carved into the likeness of a sarcophagus but without a lid. Instead, hundreds of clay jars lined its edges, each sealed with black wax. Amira gasped. "Canopic jars, but more. This is a funerary chamber, for something far greater than a man." Daniel raised his camera. The flash burst across the room, and for a brief instant, the shadows seemed to shift. One jar cracked faintly at the rim, releasing a whiff of stale air that smelled of rot. Yusuf hissed, clutching his dagger. "Do not touch them. These are the seals. If they break." But Hale stepped closer to the sarcophagus, his torchlight falling upon inscriptions carved in spirals. The language was unlike anything he had seen, symbols like serpents coiled into endless knots. His voice trembled as he copied them into his notebook. "This isn't Egyptian, this is pre-dynastic. No, pre-human. An older tongue, perhaps the root of all. If I can translate this." Amira's eyes widened as she traced one spiral. She recognized fragments, twisted echoes of hieroglyphs. Her blood ran cold as the phrase revealed itself. "Here lies the Pharaoh of Shadows, the one who ruled before the sun rose." A silence hung heavy. Even Hale faltered, his breath caught. Then Daniel, curious, brushed dust from the sarcophagus rim. As his hand grazed the stone, the torches sputtered violently. The jars rattled, their wax seals quivering. A deep groan rumbled through the chamber like the pyramid itself exhaled. The explorers froze. Amira's voice cracked. "You shouldn't have touched it." The torches flared back to life, but dimmer, weaker. And now, in the far corner of the hall, the shadows thickened unnaturally, coiling into shapes that did not belong. They fled deeper into the corridors, desperate to escape the oppressive chamber. The pyramid's interior shifted as if alive, passages twisting, stairways leading in circles. Yusuf swore under his breath, insisting the halls changed when no one looked directly at them. At last, they stumbled upon another chamber. This one was smaller but filled wall to wall with carvings of a great city, towers of black stone, temples glowing with fire, and throngs of people bowing before a throne. Upon that throne sat a figure crowned not with gold but with a circlet of obsidian shards. Amira traced the carving, her voice hushed. "The city of Kemur, the city erased from records. I've heard fragments of this legend. A king who demanded worship as a god, who drank the lifeblood of his people to prolong his reign. The gods themselves destroyed him, it was said, and buried his throne beneath the sands." Hale whispered in awe, "But they failed. They only imprisoned him here." A sudden chill swept the chamber. Daniel raised his camera again, but this time, when the flash went off, a figure appeared in the developed frame, a blurred silhouette standing just behind Hale, tall and draped in darkness. Daniel's hands shook violently. "Professor, there's something in here with us." The walls groaned, dust raining down. Somewhere deep in the pyramid, a hollow boom echoed, like a heartbeat awakening. The curse had begun. The Pharaoh awakens. The echo of that hollow boom reverberated through the endless corridors like a heartbeat pulsing in stone. Dust rained from the ceiling, the torches flickered, and for the first time since entering the pyramid, Professor Hale's unshakable confidence faltered. Amira clutched her amulet, whispering words her grandmother had taught her to ward off evil. Daniel stood frozen, camera hanging limp, his eyes darting to every shifting shadow. Yusuf muttered a prayer under his breath, his hand never leaving the hilt of his dagger. Then came the sound, soft at first, then louder. A scraping, like stone grinding against stone. It came from behind them, from the chamber they had just fled. Daniel's voice cracked. Something's moving in there. They turned, peering down the black corridor. At first, nothing. Then, from the depths, a glow began to spread. Red, sickly, unnatural, like the pulse of molten fire. The jars. The chamber of the sarcophagus. The seals were breaking. Hale, despite the terror twisting in his gut, raised his notebook, frantic. "We need to understand the inscription. There must be a way to control it. These glyphs, they're warnings but also instructions." Amira snapped at him, her patience shattered. "You still want to study this? It's not knowledge, it's a curse. Your obsession has woken it." The professor's face hardened, torn between pride and fear. Yet before he could reply, the ground beneath them trembled. From the corridor, a sound rose, a deep, guttural chant, echoing though no living lips moved. Daniel raised his camera in trembling hands and snapped a photo. The flash illuminated the darkness, and there it was. A figure, tall, cloaked in black, its face hidden behind an obsidian mask shaped like a jackal. Around its shoulders draped a cloak of shadows that seemed to writhe like serpents. The Pharaoh of Shadows had awakened. The group bolted, racing blindly through the labyrinth. The pyramid shifted as if alive, corridors bending into spirals, stairways dropping into pits, walls closing in. Behind them, the steady tread of footsteps followed, slow, deliberate, inescapable. Yusuf growled through clenched teeth. "It is not chasing, it is hurting." They stumbled into another chamber, smaller, circular, its walls etched with spiraling glyphs. At its center lay a pedestal of black stone, upon which rested a dagger unlike any they had seen. Its blade shimmered with faint blue light, as though forged from starlight itself. Amira gasped. "The Dagger of Atun, my grandmother told me stories. A weapon forged by priests to pierce the flesh of things not mortal." Hale reached for it at once, but Yusuf shoved him back with surprising force. "This is not yours, foreigner. This is a blade of judgment. Only the chosen may wield it." The old Bedouin wrapped his hand around the hilt. For a moment, Nothing. Then the blade flared brighter, casting the room in pale blue light. Yusuf's lined face softened with grim resolve. It accepts me. Hale seethed with jealousy but held his tongue. The chanting grew louder, nearer. The pharaoh's shadow stretched across the corridor, reaching toward them. The air grew so heavy it felt like drowning. Daniel dropped his camera, backing against the wall, his eyes wide and glassy. The shadows seeped into the chamber, coiling upward until the pharaoh himself emerged, towering, silent but radiating malice. His mask gleamed like black glass. With a hiss, he raised his arm, and from the floor, skeletal figures clawed their way out. Guards of the afterlife, their bones wrapped in tatters of cloth, eyes burning red. The battle erupted. Yusuf swung the dagger, and with each strike, the skeletal guardians disintegrated into dust. Amira hurled torches, setting wrappings aflame. Daniel, panic-stricken, scrambled for his camera, snapping flashes that momentarily stunned the creatures. But the pharaoh was untouched. He watched, unmoving, as if testing them. Then, with a motion of his hand, he sent a wave of shadow crashing forward, extinguishing every flame in an instant. Darkness swallowed them. Amira screamed. Daniel fumbled, his flash bursting again, revealing glimpses, skeletal claws inches from his throat, Yusuf battling in silence, Hale pressed against the wall clutching his notes like a shield. And then, the pharaoh spoke. Not with words, but with a voice that thundered directly into their minds. A voice older than time. You dare break the seal of silence. You dare trespass in the house of eternity. For this, you shall be offerings. The floor cracked. The chamber split, revealing a pit beneath, endless and glowing red as if the heart of the earth itself lay exposed. The explorers scrambled, clinging to ledges as the chamber crumbled. Yusuf, still holding the dagger, locked eyes with Hale. His voice was firm. It is not knowledge that saves us now. It is sacrifice. Before anyone could stop him, he leapt across the collapsing floor, driving the dagger into the pharaoh's chest. For a moment, silence. Then the dagger's glow flared blindingly bright, piercing the obsidian mask. The pharaoh staggered, shadows writhing violently, his form shuddering as if unraveling. But with a roar like 1,000 storms, he struck Yusuf with a single sweep of his arm. The old guide's body was hurled into the pit, vanishing into fire. The dagger clattered to the stone, its glow fading. The pharaoh straightened, pulling the blade from his chest. The wound closed instantly, his mask tilted slightly, as though mocking their futile resistance. The chamber was collapsing. The explorers scrambled through a narrow passage just as the floor gave way, the pharaoh's laughter echoing behind them. They had awoken him fully. And he was free. The curse unleashed. The survivors stumbled through the narrowing corridor, coughing on dust, their torches long extinguished. Only Daniel's camera flash offered brief bursts of light, each one a stuttering heartbeat against the suffocating dark. Amira clung to the rough wall, her lungs burning. Professor Hale limped beside her, one arm pressed against his ribs, blood seeping through torn fabric. Yusuf was gone, swallowed by fire and shadow. His sacrifice had bought them seconds, nothing more. The laughter of the Pharaoh of Shadows still echoed in their skulls, low and cruel, as if the pyramid itself had become his voice. At last, the corridor spat them out into another chamber, smaller, circular, with a jagged opening at its ceiling where faint starlight leaked through. For the first time in hours, they saw the night sky. Daniel collapsed onto the floor, trembling, clutching his camera like a holy relic. We made it out. We have to go. We can warn them. The world needs to know. Amira shook her head, tears streaking her dust-stained face. Warn them of what? He's awake now. Do you not feel it? The desert itself is stirring. She was right. The air pulsed with a rhythm, a thudding deep beneath the sands like an approaching army. Professor Hale dragged himself to the wall, clutching his notebook with bloodied hands. His eyes glowed with feverish light. No, this is not the end. This is the beginning. Do you not see? We have uncovered the oldest truth of mankind. I can still translate the inscriptions. I can still control him. Amira stared in disbelief. Control him. He slaughtered Yusuf in a single breath. You saw what he is. But Hale's obsession had long since eclipsed reason. He staggered toward the shaft of starlight, raising his notebook like scripture. This is what I was meant for. To finish what the ancients began. With knowledge comes dominion. He will not destroy me, he will crown me. Daniel's voice cracked with terror. You're insane. But before they could stop him, Hale tore pages from his notebook and began to chant the inscriptions he had copied. The words were wrong, twisted, their syllables rasping like stones grinding together. The starlight dimmed, the air froze, and from the shaft above, shadows poured downward like black water. The Pharaoh of Shadows descended, his cloak of darkness spreading to fill the chamber. His obsidian mask gleamed in the half-light, his towering frame blotting out the stars. Hale fell to his knees, arms wide, laughing and weeping all at once. Yes, yes, I offer myself as your scribe, your vessel, your priest. Together, we will restore your throne. The pharaoh bent low, mask inches from Hale's trembling face. For a heartbeat, silence. Then, he lifted a hand. A surge of black fire engulfed the professor. Hale's scream was short, sharp, and then cut off. When the fire receded, nothing remained but ash and a notebook charred beyond recognition. Amira and Daniel stood paralyzed. The pharaoh turned to them. His voice thundered directly into their skulls, a chorus of agony. Your world has forgotten me. Your world will remember. The sands will rise, and the sun itself will bow. He raised both arms. Above the pyramid, the desert trembled. Villages miles away felt the shockwaves. Dunes collapsed, swallowed into pits. Sandstorms erupted without wind. The stars dimmed as if veiled by a colossal shadow stretching across the sky. Amira grabbed Daniel's hand, pulling him toward a crumbling passage. We can't fight him, but we can escape. Someone has to tell the world. Daniel stumbled after her, clutching his camera. Behind them, the pharaoh rose higher, his form dissolving into a towering storm of shadow that bled upward into the night sky. They ran through twisting tunnels until, at last, they burst through a crack in the pyramid's side, collapsing into the cold desert night. The stars above flickered like dying embers. In the distance, the pyramid groaned as if alive, its tip glowing with crimson light. Shadows stretched outward from it, racing across the dunes like rivers of ink. Amira and Daniel staggered to their feet. Daniel raised his camera with shaking hands, snapping one final photo, the pyramid consumed in darkness, the sky bleeding red above it. This will prove it, he whispered. Even if no one believes us, the world will see. Amira looked at him, her face pale and determined. Then we run, and we never stop. Behind them, the Pharaoh of Shadows unfurled himself fully into the night. His laughter rolled across the desert like thunder, carried on winds that tasted of ash. And from that moment on, the sands of Egypt were no longer silent. They whispered, they waited, for their pharaoh's return.